Hey again, guys and girls, Matt here with Grab the Go Bag. This is National Registry Video 4. This is part 2 now. We're going to not go as much step by step as we are going to kind of speed up the progression through the exam. And we're going to talk about what happens as we get questions wrong and what happens as we hit that minimum number of questions once we start to get to about question 70. All right. So again, the scenario here is passing with the minimum number of questions. This is video 2 to piggyback on what we did earlier in video 1. Just to remind you, what we're looking at is a specially designed exam. We created an adaptive exam using the categories from the National Registry, using the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and using a series of questions where we deliver 3 questions and then decide, based on those 3 questions of equal difficulty, did you mostly answer them correct or mostly incorrect, and then we move forward from there. So we're basically tracking what happens as we walk through the exam, just like you saw in part 1. All right. Now, this is kind of where we left off. We had finished most of the questions here, and again, we said that we took question 14, 15, even 20, but we can't see the results of those in the lower right because that table we're looking at right now is a series 1 for each category. But we're going to fix that, okay? These questions right here that we did not highlight yet, we're highlighting them now, and we're going to show you where that information got entered, okay? Now you'll see that in the lower right, we've now switched to the next series for all these categories. This is now series 2, and those questions, the 3 that are circled, are the 3 that we answered previously that we couldn't see the answers to. Okay, so now we're on question 21. It's going to progress very similar to what we saw earlier. We had progression in all these different categories. We started to circle our progress and show that as we move through completion of the question series, the computer makes a decision. So here again in airway, the second series is over almost instantly because of the randomness, and they all line up with question 21, 22, and 23. So we were testing at Bloom's level 3 as far as difficulty, and you'll see that we answered question 1 of series 2 correctly, question 2 correctly, question 3 incorrect. Because we've gotten most of them correct, we're still going to pass that rating that we were trying for. So in this case, it's going to be rated at 3 because that's what we were doing as far as difficulty. And again, you'll see the plus sign indicating that the next series of questions will be even more difficult. Okay, so that's what we see there as far as airway. Now, we're going to continue that process, and we're going to see what happens with the rest of these answers here. As we continue through the exam, we're basically simulating really quickly, just moving forward, just like we did in part 1. Now you'll see medical is now finished. Again, if you look down there in the lower right, you'll see 2 correct answers, 1 incorrect. We're still getting them mostly correct, so we're still doing well as far as the rating, okay? Now, we're going to continue to make progress. Now we see that we've upped to a level 3 competency in medical. We're going to keep moving forward. Operations, another pilot question. Remember, those have nothing to do with your grade. Cardiology, another pilot question, again, not reflected in your grade or the progress of your exam at all. Okay. Now you're going to see finalizing the trauma series of questions there, and we got all 3 trauma questions correct, so we're going to get a rating of 3+. And you'll see that represented here. Now we've moved up. You notice we've moved from a red, which indicates level 2, to orange, which indicates level 3. What we're really shooting for, remember, is that level 4. So we're getting closer. And we're only about halfway done with the exam, so we've got plenty of time. Okay. Now, we're going to see more progress here as we move through. We finished out operations category. You're going to see that right there. And still, we're answering things mostly correct. So you can see, just looking at this table in the lower right, that most of the answers here are correct, or even inside a series of questions for a category, maybe all of them are correct, all right? Now here on question 35, remember we are on the next set of questions for airway. We can't see those on this table in the lower right, but we are going to answer this question. That one's correct, this 36 is incorrect, and we'll see those updated here in a second. Pilot questions don't count. We're finishing out cardiology. We're going to see our rating move up in cardiology. There you go. We get another pilot question, which doesn't count for our grade. And we move into Series 3 operations, which again, we can't see on this particular table in the lower right. Now, you're going to see that we've moved forward in all these areas, right? And here is the next series of questions. And those ones that you couldn't see the results of, they're highlighted here now. So we've already started that table for the next series of questions. And again, we're making pretty uniform progress because we're mostly getting things correct. So you can get stuff wrong once in a while. As long as you're getting things right more often than you're getting things wrong, you're going to make consistent forward progress. Okay. Now, we're going to go into a next series of questions, really quick, rapid fire stuff. And we're really just showing that because we're getting them mostly correct, we're starting to move up now from level 3 to level 4. We have a couple hiccups in there and kind of mess up a little bit. But for the most part, we're going to start moving up from level 3 to level 4. Okay. Now I want you to notice question 57 and 59. Those are part of a series 4 medical. And question 1 and 2, and they're both incorrect. So remember what I said earlier. We have 3 attempts to get something correct or incorrect. If we got 2 of them wrong, we've officially now gotten more wrong at that level of difficulty than we got right. So what's going to happen there is we don't make progress on medical at this point. You'll notice that medical is not going to go up to that level 5 that we attempted. And the reason it's not going to go up is because we're answering those incorrectly, okay? So that one's not going to go up. You'll see the ones where we answered them mostly correctly, they did go up, all right? Just to recap, or show you the rest of the incorrect answers and how that kind of works out, you'll notice we get a bunch of questions incorrect, and that's pretty common. We're now testing at a Bloom's level 5, and we're getting toward the end of the exam. So the questions are getting kind of difficult, all right? Now, once we get them wrong, again, we have to decide whether that series of questions is mostly correct or mostly incorrect. And here's the answer. In some categories, it's enough to get us moved up. In some, it is not. So you'll see cardiology, it wasn't enough. We actually answered those mostly incorrect. So we stayed at a level 4, all right? We also stayed at a level 4 in operations, okay? We also stayed at a level 4 in medical. Now, questions we did really well on, and series we did really well on, we did well on trauma, we moved up to a 5, and we did well on airway, we also moved up to a 5. So now that we're done with 70 questions, all right, this is the minimum number, so the computer has to decide, do we need to keep the test going or not? So what's going to happen is I want to draw your attention to this line right here. At this particular point, after the 70 question minimum, the computer looks to see if you've reached all the goals that we set. And here's the goal. Minimum competence in each category. Remember, we set that at a level 4 inside the minimum number of questions, which is 70, at that required level of confidence. Now, that confidence thing, we don't have to worry too much about that. That's just statistics and how things are calculated on the back end of the test. But just to summarize that idea, just because you got a couple questions right and moved up to a level 5 doesn't mean the computer is confident of your performance at a level 5 unless you've answered enough questions correctly at level 5, if that makes sense, okay? So what it's going to do is it's going to look and see where you're at right now at this point, and if you are at or above that minimum threshold, which again, we made it a 4 in this example, you're going to be able to pass the exam. And you'll see that we have now 5, 4, 5, 4, and 4. So we've met the minimum or exceeded the minimum in each category. So what that means is that the test now stops, okay? And when it stops, the result is not given to us. We don't know the result until the registry updates us a couple days after the exam, all right? But on the back end, it absolutely knows that you have passed the exam. So the reason you passed, again, is because you showed the minimum competence in each category within that minimum number of questions at the required level of confidence. And so the test software decides there's no need to give you any more questions because you've already met all the checkboxes, all the criteria in order to pass. Now, there are other outcomes to the exam. If you have not hit the minimum in each category, this is where we get into adding additional questions up to a maximum of 120. Now, the tricky part is if you haven't shown that you're minimally proficient, if you're not at a level 4 or higher after 120 questions, then you don't get any more questions. It's a hard stop and it's an exam fail. And again, you don't know that that's happened. It just stops the exam at 120. So there are some people out there that will tell you that if you got cut off at 70, you passed. Well, that is possibly true, but you can also fail the test miserably and get cut off at 70 as well. And we're going to make a video on that. So the long and short is you cannot tell how you did based on the number of questions the test gave you. Now, just looking back at kind of what we talked about, first of all, congratulations if you have met the passing criteria so easily, but you probably felt like the test was difficult, right? Now, here's the thing. If you feel like the difficulty of the exam is progressing and the questions are getting more and more difficult, you'll realize that is what was happening in our example. So that's a good feeling to have. It still doesn't really tell you if you passed or not. Ultimately, you won't know until the final results come back a couple days later. But hopefully this helps you to understand the exam and how it progresses in the case that you keep getting things mostly correct. Thanks for watching this video. Remember, you can get more help and resources at grabthegobag.com, and we'll see you in the future videos to wrap up the series with the other exam outcomes. This is Matt from Grab the Go Bag, and thanks for watching.